here in his Peel portrait, he has largely inexperienced troops, little money to pay them, clothe them, or feed them, but they press on in many battles over the next year and beyond. Meanwhile, in France, the Comte de Vergennes, foreign minister for the French King Louis XVI, is watching closely under the theory that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The French had been beaten by the English in the 7 Years' War and had lost all of their holdings in Canada, all of this, which had enabled them to get across the Atlantic, down the St. Lawrence, down to the Ohio River, and then to the Mississippi, and New Orleans to the West Indies. Oops, sorry. So this was a deadly blow to their trade across the Atlantic and with the West Indies. So this was a big motivation for the French. The Comte de Vergennes sends a young, inconspicuous gentleman, Julien Achard de Bonvouloir, here to do some reconnaissance and report back his findings. He makes his way to Philadelphia. In late December of 1775, the library company's library was, so this was Benjamin Franklin started the library company, remember? And so it's still there in Carpenter's Hall. It's not the library company anymore, but it's the Carpenter's Hall Library now. And they meet, and no notes were taken. The only documentation was Achard's report to Vergennes, which was only found in recent years in the French National Archives. Silas Deane of Connecticut left for Paris in March of 1776 to begin secret discussions with Vergennes. Other reports are coming to him. According to an article for the Carpenters' Company by Karl Karsch, I quote, "The most consistent and brilliantly written reports came from the French embassy in London's secret agent with the imposing name of Pierre-Augustin Caron de Beaumarchais. Better known as a successful Parisian dramatist, his works reflected egalitarian influences of the Enlightenment. 2 of his plays were adapted as operas, The Barber of Seville, by Rossini, and The Marriage of Figaro by Mozart. In both works, aristocratic traditions received their comeuppance. Beaumarchais' politics were similarly biased. His chief informant was John Wilkes, a close friend of Franklin and a pro-American Whig leader jailed by George III. Vergennes and Louis XVI accepted his reports enthusiastically without even a few grains of salt," end quote. So with this intelligence and the similarly positive reports from Bonvouloir, Vergennes is encouraged, but unsure if it is worth the gamble to support this risky proposition. Deane and Beaumarchais set up a dummy company that will send French money, uniforms, armaments, and munitions to Martinique, a French island in the Caribbean. The American consul there, William Bingham, you see here, then transships the materiel on American ships that go to Philadelphia, as well as taking care of the banking side of the things. And he becomes the richest man in America. Indeed, this is his house on 3rd Street, or mansion, I should say. This is the Powell house right here. So there, his wife is the niece of Elizabeth Powell, so this is all family property in here. All of the above has taken place before independence was declared. Because of his position as elder statesman and his experience in London representing in Parliament the colonies of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Georgia, for most of the years from 1757 to 1775, Franklin is chosen to be minister plenipotentiary to King Louis XVI. With 2 fellow commissioners, Arthur Lee and Silas Deane, His mission is to persuade the king to officially support the new nation. Franklin arrives in December of 1776 with his two grandsons. He is close to 71 years old and not in great health, but determined to accomplish the job given to him by the Continental Congress. His accomplishments as an inventor are well known, so he is much admired by all, especially the ladies. And you see him here. I love this portrait because it shows him in his plain brown coat and a fur cap instead of a fancy wig or in a fancy suit of clothing, which gentlemen would. So he's showing himself as the common man, the middling sort from the wilds of America. The eminent visitor is given the use of a villa in Passy, just to the west of Paris. It overlooks the Seine and has lovely gardens to stroll in. He can entertain here and relax. Well, that's unlikely, given the many demands on his time and his love of social life. So here's Paris, greater downtown Paris, and Passy is right here on the edge of the Bois de Boulogne, and then Versailles is out here. So he's kind of midway and closer to Versailles, where he needs to spend time in Paris. So these salons there are quite a few of them, but his two favorites. One of salons, one is hosted by Madame Browne de Jouy, who adored Franklin, and he was a regular at her salons at her house nearby in Passy. They featured music which she composed and played. She's captivated by one of his inventions, the glass harmonica. Now, I have a clip here, and I'm not sure if it's going to work, Ed. Okay, it works. This is Ken Burns, a little bit short video.
One evening in Cambridge, he attended a concert of sorts.
Cambridge, England.
The rims of wine glasses were rubbed to produce musical notes.
Oh wait, it's not working. Oh shoot. Oh shoot, it's not working. I'm sorry.
Why move your arms?
I went into YouTube.
Well, you can just listen to it. Oh dear, that's a shame. I'm sorry.
To that degree, why not take the glasses and have them move and your hands stay still?
He hired a London glass blower to create a series of 36 glass bowls to specific thicknesses and sizes.
And rather than having your fingers move around the glasses rotated and he wet his fingers and played it like a keyboard.
He named his new invention the harmonica, after the Italian word for harmony, and charmed visitors with performances on it. Soon, more of the instruments were being manufactured and sold, though Franklin again refused to patent or profit from his invention. What pleased him most was that in musical circles throughout England and Europe, the harmonica created a sensation. In Austria, Franklin's invention provided the music for a royal wedding. Even Mozart and Beethoven would compose chamber pieces for it.
The sound it made was described as celestial ravishment.
Hi, this is Ken Burns.
So I'm sorry not to see, but if you want to go onto YouTube and look for Ken Burns on glass harmonica, you could probably see it as well as hearing it. So that's Madame de Jouy, and then Madame Browne de Jouy, and then there's Madame Helvétius, who had a high-powered salon, regularly inviting writers, thinkers, scientists, and politicians. And she also had 18 Angora cats decked out in silk ribbons. Franklin wanted to marry her as he wanted to marry Madame Brillon, but they both saw him as a father figure more. I mean, my God, he's 71, you know. Well, so this is much of his life. Of the many philosophes of the French Enlightenment that he might have met at one of these salons were Denis Diderot and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Diderot wrote of his 1751 encyclopedia here. Oh, oops, sorry. That was a collection of articles written by a wide variety of experts that, and I quote, an encyclopedia should encompass not only the fields already covered by the academies, sort of the main establishment of academics, but each and every branch of human knowledge, end quote. Comprehensive knowledge will give the power to change men's common way of thinking. And then Jean-Jacques Rousseau's 1762, The Social Contract, outlines the basis for a legitimate political order within a framework of classical republicanism. It became one of the most influential works of political philosophy in the Western tradition. According to Rousseau, by joining together into civil society through the social contract, abandoning their claims of natural right, individuals can both preserve themselves and remain free. This is because submission to the authority of the general will of the people as a whole guarantees individuals being subordinated to the wills of others and ensures that they obey themselves because they are collectively the authors of the law. Although Rousseau argues that sovereignty, or the power to make the laws, should be in the hands of the people, he also makes a sharp distinction between the sovereign and the government. The government is composed of magistrates charged with implementing and enforcing the general will. The sovereign is the rule of law, decided on by direct democracy in an assembly. Interesting? Mm-hmm. Perhaps the most important of the philosophes that he met was François-Marie Arouet, known as Voltaire. They only met near the end of Voltaire's life, but their connection was very interesting. You can see here that the prolific sculptor Jean-Antoine Houdon did portraits of them both the same year, the year that Voltaire died at 83. So Benjamin Franklin was a Mason, and there's a blog online called the Scottish Rite of Masons blog. He became a Mason when he was 25 in 1731 and named Grand Master 4 years later. When he came to Paris, he joined the Lodge of Nine Sisters, and this is their medallion here, and the Nine Sisters are the daughters of the Muse of Memory, whose name I can't pronounce. So the Lodge of Nine Sisters in 1778, so soon after he arrived, as soon as he probably arrived in December, entering a community that included some of the world's greatest minds. This position opened the door for him to promote the ideals behind the American Revolution. This factor not only increased French support for the war, but had implications for the French Revolution several years later. Historians note that in addition to using his position to encourage support for America, with over 40 years of Masonic duty to his name at that time, Franklin also contributed to the lodge by helping Voltaire, the great writer and philosopher, to be inducted into the Brotherhood. It is no surprise that Franklin became the venerable master of the Lodge of Nine Sisters, serving from 1779 to 1781. So here you see him in his Masonic regalia, the apron that they all wore, and this is the symbol of it. I have it. Well, it's the T square and the compass is here. You can see it here on the plaque. And here is Franklin with George Washington statues outside the Masonic Temple, just across the street from City Hall on Broad Street in Philadelphia. A further quote, new brothers joining this lodge pledged to fly to the aid of humanity, a timeless Masonic vow. Franklin used this commitment to his advantage, leaning on his brethren to call for aid to be sent to the colonies in the war against England. Ultimately, the help from France was vital to the United States gaining independence. So, interesting facet of Franklin's life. When he stopped attending church, Franklin wrote in his autobiography, Sunday being my studying day, I was never without some religious principles. I never doubted, for instance, the existence of the deity, that he made the world and governed it by his providence, that the most acceptable service of God was the doing good to man, that our souls are immortal, and that all crime will be punished and virtue rewarded either here or hereafter. So that's from his autobiography. Franklin retained a long life commitment to the non-religious Puritan virtues. Remember when I talked about the religious roots of the independence, that there was the issue with Roger Williams over the first 4 commandments, which were a personal relationship with God, and then the other 4 were a social virtues, and so our expectations. So that the Puritans, so these are the non-religious Puritan virtues and political values he had grown up with, and through his civic work and publishing, he succeeded in passing these values into the American culture permanently. I mean, how many of those little aphorisms from Poor Richard's Almanac can you remember from your childhood? Waste not, want not, right? And yeah, others you can think of. A stitch in time saves 9. Yeah, good. So these Puritan, and through his civic work and publishing, he succeeded in passing these values into the American culture permanently. I mean, here we are, right? He had a passion for virtue. These Puritan values included his devotion to egalitarianism, education, industry, thrift, honesty, temperance, charity, and community spirit. And here's some of his, the memorabilia. This is a French clock. These were very big in the 18th century in Paris. The clock, there's one of Washington too. And, but I'm not sure he'd like to see himself all gilded like that. And a medallion. And then this is a little cup. I don't know if you can read it, but it says, I can't read it, Franklin's Poor Richard. Yeah. And the way to wealth is illustrated. Thank you. That's a cup that was my grandmother's, and I'm not sure where she got it, but I still have it. So, over the following year, after Franklin's arrival, there was a lot of back and forth and maneuvering and dealing with British spies, including Dr. Edward Bancroft, who was Franklin's secretary, who was spying on his activities all along. But Franklin suspected he probably was, so he was pretty careful. And Louis XVI was reluctant to support a generally unsuccessful effort on the part of Washington and his troops. Finally, after the American troops defeated the British at Saratoga in October of 1777, King Louis was ready, and at last a treaty of alliance between the two countries was signed at Versailles in February of 1778. And so that's what you see here. Franklin is crowned here. So Franklin is being admired by the French court, and American independence is all the rage. So here you see him being crowned with a laurel wreath, once again in his plain suit and no wig. Here's Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI. And then this incredible construction that, I don't know, can you imagine putting that on your head? And it's called Coiffure, well, here, I wrote it here, Independence, Coiffure, or the Triumph of Liberty. Excuse me. During all this time, Washington needs engineers to carry out battle arrangements and structures. There are a lot of French and other military officers who fought in the 7 Years' War, but peacetime leaves them idle, so many are itching to go and participate. Silas Deane recruits officers such as these to help out. 2 of them are French and 2 are Prussians, but DeKalb Pike, he's not far from here, and the King of Prussia, it's either DeKalb or von Steuben, who had something to do with establishment of a tavern and near Valley Forge, which was called the King of Prussia. So that's where that all comes from. Anyway, so they were engineers and helping out, and von Steuben helped a lot in training the troops during the winter at Valley Forge. And then there was one very young, 19-year-old, hanging around Versailles, who had time, money, and tremendous enthusiasm to fight for liberty, Gilbert Motier, Marquis de Lafayette. He sets off in the summer of 1777 in a ship he has had built for him with lots of his young fellow officers. He meets up with Washington in Philadelphia and offers his services. They form a close bond, as Washington has no son of his own, and Lafayette has recently lost his father. So here you see him, and the two. He fights with Washington at the Battle of Brandywine, despite not speaking much English, which they lose, and in which he was wounded, which is pretty hard. But look at this map, if you can see. Here's the Delaware River. Yeah.
Your cursor's not showing up on the screen. You're seeing it on your computer.
Oh, I forgot to turn this on. I am sorry. Yeah, thank you, Susan. Okay, there we are. Okay, so here's the Delaware, here's Philadelphia, and then you see the red dots are where there were battles. So, where is it? Is that Chad's Ford right there? No. Oh, there, yeah, Chad's Ford, and this is the Brandywine Creek, so that's that battle. And then they're all up through here. Valley Forge is, if I looked on my screen, I could see it better. Here's Valley Forge, and it doesn't mark Germantown, but Germantown is here, and that's where the Battle of Germantown took place at Clifton on October 4th, 1777. So Washington, after this defeat, Washington is able to get away to Valley Forge, where he spends that long, very hard winter. Meanwhile, the British settle into Philadelphia for the winter, and spring comes, and before General Howe and his troops leave town, his officers throw a big party in his honor, and it's called the Meschianza. So here you have the American loyalist John Andre, Peggy Shippen, who local Philadelphia belle, who loves to shop, and you can just tell looking at her. I mean, she's got one of those headdresses, right? She married Benedict Arnold, and who was an American general. And some people think that it was because of her need to shop that he sold out to the British. So anyway, here's General Howe, and then a ticket for the Meschianza.
What does meschianza mean?
Don't ask me. I have the slightest idea. It's Italian. Anybody speak Italian? No. Oh, okay. Yeah, that could be. It was sort of like this big of a, yeah, because, thank you. Yeah, it's, they'd had all sorts of different events happening. It was like a day-long thing at a big estate south of the city. So, yeah. So the following day, the British set off to the northwest, wanting to get themselves back to New York. And Washington gets word of it and sends Lafayette from Valley Forge across the Schuylkill River with about 2,000 soldiers and some native guides. And here's the battle map. Now, some of you have seen, I know, have seen this before, and I'm sorry to do it again, but it is so fascinating and wonderful. I have to share it with you again. So this is a map made for Lafayette's aide-de-camp, so it's all in French, which I was happily able to read most of it. And I'm not going to give it to you word by word, but basically what you see is the Schuylkill River here, and down here is the German town. I think it says German T, right? And Chestnut Hill and White Marsh, and all along here, which is like Germantown Pike, right, are the Brit. And the key over here tells you that the Americans are the yellow and blue. Now that's what the colors of their uniforms, and the English are the red, and the green are the Hessians. So up in here you see the red, and then green, and then there's a yeah, right here is can you see there's a little church there, and it was a high point so they could look out and see what the situation was. And what they saw was this is Lafayette and his troops who were camped on this hill called Barren Hill, and they go up and they see that there are British all here. There are British coming up the Rich Road. What do you think that is? Ridge, right? Quite get it. And so there's British all around them. So there's a brief skirmish, and Lafayette decides it's time to go back to Valley Forge. So they turn and go down Barren Hill Road, stop in for dinner at the Spring Mill Cafe, cross back over at Matson's Ford. And if you know that part of the world, Matson's Ford Road is what it's called on the other side of the river in Conshohocken. And I have some detail here. You all recognize this sign that's just out on Ridge Avenue a little ways. So some blowing up of this. So here the British coming up the Rich Road, and then so I figured Cathedral Village was right about here. They stopped in for a swim in the pool or something, and this is a road that goes down and crosses the Wissahickon Creek and goes to Chestnut Hill. So what is that? Bells Mill Road, right? So, and then this is a little bit, it's a more close up of that. So anyway, isn't that amazing? I just love seeing that. Meanwhile, by the time of this incident, the treaty between France and America has recently been signed. And the Marquis de Rochambeau arrives in Newport in July 1780 with 7,000 French troops. June of 1781, he starts marching his troops south to meet up with George Washington in Dobbs Ferry, New York. So this map can point out a few things. First of all, here's Philadelphia. And then, so this is Long Island, here's Manhattan, the Hudson River, so Connecticut, and so Newport is, up here somewhere. And so and this is a partial map, but it shows the places they camped along the way. And then, and where is that place? Dobbs Ferry. They loop around and they meet up with Washington and continue on here. And it's taking, this is camp. If you can see, there these red writing is numbers of where they camped and what day it was. So this is, I don't know if anybody can, I can't see it on my little screen, but if you can see what number is camp, 24 or something like that. So this is, they're making their way south, and they come to Philadelphia, coming in from the northeast and of the city. And here's a description of it. Would somebody like to read that? Just Woody Franklin, you did such a great job of reading the other day. Can you see that well enough? Let's give you yeah. Okay, Susan has a microphone. There you go.
Yeah, I want to make sure I can see it. Right. I think so. When we came within sight of the city, when we came within sight of the city, the army halted and the troops spruced up. With drums beating the flag and flags unfurled, we entered at a walk. The streets and the line of march were crowded with people who were absolutely amazed to see such a fine army. It took us an hour and a half to cross this large and beautiful city. We passed the State House where the members of Congress were assembled on the front steps, sorry. We saluted them, then passed the house of the Chevalier de la Luzerne, the ambassador of France to Congress, where the quality of the town was assembled. The quality. We then went to camp on the Schuylkill River, 5 miles from the town. Jean-François Louis, Comte de Clermont, Crèvecoeur Journal.
Great, thank you so much. And where they camped on the other side of town was right to the right of where Market Street crosses the Schuylkill River to go to 30th Street Station. So right down in there along the river was where they were for, a few days, I guess, not that long, because they had to get south. So here is this, and a few years ago when there was sort of 200th anniversary, 250 something, a group was formed called the W3R, the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route, W3R. And it putting signs up on all the stops that Rochambeau took, and the two of them together to get to Yorktown. So here you can see it on the map. Here's Newport's up here, and then they meet up with Washington at Dobbs Ferry, as I said before, and then Lafayette is with them, and they go down, and some of them go by sea. I think Washington's groups go by sea, and Lafayette goes off this way, kind of runs up against the British, takes a little hoopla around Charlottesville, and then they all meet at Yorktown. As you can see, the British have been in the South. So here they are, and the British are totally surrounded by the Americans, except for getting out to sea. And the Admiral de Grasse, with his fleet, comes up from the West Indies and blocks off the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay, and the British are cornered. In this great picture of these are the French ships, and these are the British. And Um, so anyway, they, the French and American troops defeat the British and the war is won. So here they are. This is a painting of Washington, obviously, and Rochambeau. And behind Washington is, what do you think? Lafayette, yeah, And then this is Pierre L'Enfant. Anybody ever been to Washington, D.C. and seen L'Enfant Plaza? Well, he's the one who designed the city of Washington. He stayed after the Revolution and got involved in that. And here's the surrender of Cornwallis to Washington, October of 1781.
Libby,
Mhm.
at Yorktown, having lived in Richmond
Oh, yeah.
for 50 years, there's really, if anybody happens to go south of Philadelphia.
Talk about the
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
Rick.
I was saying, having lived in Richmond the last 50 years, I got very interested in the southern part, even though I'm in Philadelphia. And there's wonderful, wonderful things to see down there telling about Yorktown, really. So if you happen to be south of Philadelphia, Yorktown's really wonderful to see.
Very good. Great. Thank you. So the Treaty of Paris is signed in September of 1783. And this is I was walking down the Rue Jacob in Paris one day and I looked up and saw this sign. I'm like, oh my God. In this building, and I'll translate it for you. In this building, once known as the Hotel of York, September 3rd, 1783, David Hartley, in the name of the King of England, Benjamin Franklin, John Jay, and John Adams, in the name of the United States of America, signed the definitive peace treaty recognizing the independence of the United States. And America becomes an independent world nation with the support of the French, common soldiers, and aristocratic and middling sort leaders. And the power of this alliance and this conflict are echoed in the French Revolution that explodes just after the American Constitution was written, 1787, 1789. And that revolution has a similar course to the American one, with initial leadership being from conservative aristocrats led by Lafayette, who was helped by Thomas Jefferson. And then it turns radical, being led by the middling and lower sort. And with the invention of the guillotine, much of the aristocracy is eliminated. However, Lafayette goes to prison, and it is only his status as an honorary American citizen that keeps him and his wife from the same fate. So, a postscript. Benjamin Franklin returned to Philadelphia in 1785 and was delegate to the Constitutional Convention in the summer of 1787. Then, 81, he was brought to the State House in a sedan chair every day, carried by porters because of his ill health, especially gout. He died 3 years later and was buried in the Christ Church yard at 5th and Arch Streets. You see here, it's the first one here. As he was carried there, it seemed the whole city had turned out to honor this remarkable Philadelphian and American. This believer in the freedom of religion had requested that members of the clergy of all Philadelphia's many houses of worship accompany him, including the rabbi of Mikveh Israel, and they all did. And there's the wonderful statue of him at the Franklin Institute. Lafayette, funny thing, I lost my text there. Well, so he lost a slide. No, sorry. Okay, so he died in Paris in 1834. And he had come back in 1785 with, at the same time, Thomas Jefferson came to Paris, and they, oh, I did lose a slide. I have a picture of Thomas Jefferson and Lafayette, and they worked on the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, which is heavily modeled on the Declaration of Independence. And then Lafayette is named the head of the National Guard, so he's the military leader in France. And this is him taking an oath at the Fête de la Fédération on July 14th, so 1 year after the fall of the Bastille, 1790. And then he returned to the United States in 1824-25, and here's this huge parade in front of Independence Hall. Here he is in his carriage going through, look at the crowds. And he went to see Independence Hall, and which, as I've said to you many times before, was then called the State House because it was the head of the Pennsylvania government and Philadelphia. But he named it, your Hall of Independence. And that's where, when he was there on that visit on this day. So that's where the name Independence Hall comes from. So he's buried in the Picpus Cemetery in Paris, in the 12th arrondissement of Paris, which is a kind of off, out of the way place. And here's his grave, his and his wife, Adrienne Deneuve, and they were buried there along with many of her relations who had been removed by the guillotine. And so, but that American flag has flown in that spot in the corner of Paris ever since, even when the Nazis occupied Paris. It was there. So that brings us to the end, and I hope you have been able to make sense of this hugely complex era, and you come away with an appreciation of all that happened in Philadelphia during the American Revolution and elsewhere. Thank you. Thank you all for being such a great audience, and it's been great fun to do this. And then any questions? I see a bunch of hands up.
There is a book about the three men, Beaumarchais, Silas Deane, and another man who I don't think you mentioned, named the Chevalier d'Eon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh,
The book is called Unlikely Allies.
Huh.
And it tells the story of how they met up and planned to send aid to the Americans, which arrived, I think, at Saratoga just in the nick of time, which is one reason why the Americans won that battle.
Oh, huh.
It's a good book. I don't know if he has our book, but
No, it's not.
Private Free Library probably does.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Richard. That's fascinating. Yeah.
You told the story of the 7,000 men that came over from France to help the Americans.
Uh-huh.
And they moved from camp to camp to camp to camp. I didn't count, but at least 5 or 6 camps until they reached their destination. How were they fed? Because there is a saying, you know, soldiers fight on their stomach.
Well, you know, they found stuff in the fields, and I mean, yeah, that was a huge issue. And women, you know, you talk about camp followers, and that's always like, oh yeah, right. But actually, women did come with them and help them, and they would find food and cook it, and if they had campfires and stuff. So they were a huge part of this this whole massive effort. Now, I'm not sure that would be true of the French soldiers, but certainly the Americans. But who knows, maybe, yeah. Yeah, back there, is that Philip? Oh.
I'm just wondering how Franklin and the other Americans learned French. Did they have tutors, or self-taught?
Don't know. Because Franklin and I would suspect some of the French people spoke English, but and Lafayette didn't speak English, so it's not sure. Anybody know?
We know he spent his Sundays studying.
Yes,
Maybe
right.
that was.
So maybe he spent his Sundays studying French, probably. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Actually, that was my question too, about bilingual and who spoke the other languages, and it sounds like it was kind of a piecemeal thing.
Probably, very definitely that, yeah.
Would it have been true, though, that educated people often did speak French? I mean, French was kind of the lingua franca, right?
This is true, yeah. But probably not in Puritan Boston if you were a printer's apprentice, So, but there were a lot of French people in Philadelphia, actually, from early days. So maybe there was some here. Yeah.
I have a question about the Hessians.
Yeah.
Where do they fit into all of this to talk about different languages?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do you have something?
Well, I just know something about the Hessians.
Hold on, Barbara.
In fact, there was a little discord between my husband and me. His family were Austrian, Klingenhofer, which means bell ringer. They were Hessians, and they came over to fight with the British. And I said, Jack, what are we going to do about this?
Well, I'll tell you something. I've never seen this in any official document, but my husband and I went to Berlin some years ago, and we went to a Schloss outside Berlin, and I can't remember the name of it now. And there was an exhibit, and I saw a document that showed that the Prince of Hesse had sent X number of soldiers to the British Army. So they weren't mercenaries, they were prisoners of war. Cannon fodder, right? Right. But it was not like they were making money off this. That's the last thing they were doing. It was the leaders of the countries, shifting bodies back and forth.
Just one more thing about the Hessians, Germantown.
Mm.
That were the
No.
Germans.
They were Palatine Germans.
It's different group.
Yeah.
They may have been two words, but they were Germans.
Well, there was no Germany yet, so
That's right.
Germanic. Yeah.
They came from a different, right.
Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you all so much, and.
Yeah.